Hello again, everybody. Welcome back for part 2 of Double Trouble with Jessie. And we're going to be chatting and looking at some somewhat entertaining pics of the Met Gala. So yeah, it's always fun to do those as well. And then just a reminder, I might just pop off for a few minutes at about half an hour from now. My load shedding schedule seems to be back in action again here. So let's hope it doesn't carry on too long. Okay, guys and girls, then without any further ado, let's bring the lady of the day on.
Hello, hello. I always like your introductions.
I just love having you on, Jessie. It's so fun.
The
Yay.
hostess with the mostest.
Or mostest awesome guests and viewers. You see, you mustn't forget that part.
So true. So true.
That's the very important part to remember. Yay. But anyway, I think, yeah, let's open in prayer if you're good with that.
All right. Heavenly Father, again, we thank you for such a beautiful day. We thank you for life today. We thank you for all of your goodness and everything that you provide, especially wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. Lord, we thank you for those things that we don't have to walk about this world blind. We ask that as we have this conversation, that you would guard our technology, our internets, our airways, our equipment, Lord. And we ask that you would bless this conversation, that you would grow us in our knowledge and wisdom and understanding. And we ask that you would show us how to apply it into our lives. In your name we pray, Jesus. Amen.
Thank you, Jessie.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, guys and girls, if you didn't catch the earlier show, please do. We were talking about the popes and, wow, decoding the new pope. But what I really find fascinating, that's what we're going to be doing next week. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be going into the history of the popes, actually, and going into the individual popes to see who they belong to.
Yeah.
That's going to be fun. Because the Vatican is the head of the church, right? The Vatican is really the head of everything, even though these guys are just little puppets for some very nefarious things going on in the background. But still, they tell us a lot, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. Tells
Very
us a lot.
Good. Lovely to know that we're getting our little claws into some juicy stuff here. Yeah, wow. Anyway, well, today we're looking at the Met Gala and some of the people.
I want to get into, before we show all the pictures, I just want to say a few things.
Yeah.
A while back, we did a show, I think we titled it Chantilly Lace. But we talked about, you know, how these elite, they gather, they have parties, really, you know, what happens at these parties, they're kind of comparable to brothels. You know, you're going to have individuals that are known as madams. That's the female version, uh, who will kind of be in charge of the overall parties. Um, that, you know, these people will be connected to grand high priest, grand high priestesses who are quadrant leaders. But their job is to oversee the escorts. And the male versions of the madams, there are some, I don't know their official names. I guess we could just call them, you know, let me take that back. Some of them, depending on areas, are known as jacks. Some are known as kings or kingpins or other terms, but um, they, you get a little bit of a different party, but for the sake of it, we're just going to call them madams and dams, um, just because that's a good name for them. But you know, they're going to oversee the escorts, those that are providing escort services, aka prostitution, at the events, which usually are going to connect to rituals underground. So, what are different ways that they present? Within this system, you have hierarchy, and that hierarchy is going to be catered to. And there's unspoken rules within this hierarchy. You can't just have a low level beta kitty sex slave marching in and finding herself among the top of the elite. Um, it's not going to happen. So there's different ways that they will present themselves in order to display, you know, who are they able to cater to or who's able to cater to them. So you'll get it both ways where the elite will wear special jewels, um, those jewels indicating their levels. It can be other things, it can be colors, scarves, hats. There'll be different symbols that they'll be wearing on their body that will display what level they are. They can also be known by their handshakes, um, certain signs that they may display. Um, your escorts also are going to have identifiers, whether that's certain tattoos, like, we've talked about how they might have like a triangle with the three dots, behind the ear. Sometimes another common spot is like somewhere on the collarbone areas, shoulder areas. It could be on a hip, um, an inner thigh, but they'll have their sign or symbol. It could be lace that they're wearing. We've talked about how lace is used, certain diamonds as well. The cuts of the jewels can tell you the dimensional sex axis. Um, so all of those things are gonna, when we think of the Met Gala, the Grammys can be, used similar, um, but there's a huge display of who's able to do what, who's got won contracts, who's running for what. It can be a way that they display what positions they're running for, if they've elevated in positions. So these big events can be used to display different things within their world. So that's what we're going to look at.
Wow, makes a lot of sense, right? It's exactly like the red carpet. It's their showcase of who they are and what they're doing, maybe what they've been promoted to, right? I would imagine if they've had a few promotions in the system, I guess you could call it that. I don't know what you'd call it,
Yeah.
but that's where they would showcase that as well, right?
Right, like, when you think of the royals or world leaders, you'll see them in certain attire, whether they're wearing robes. You'll see them wearing their badges, their pins, their emblems, their different jewels that they're going to display. All of that is, telling those in the brotherhood system and the sovereign military their specs within the system. What orders are they connected to? What is their bloodline? What degree in sex magic are they? So we're going to look at some of those things and see if, by their attire, if, what is it telling us about them?
Wow. Okay, without any further ado, let's get onto it. Okay, some of them have names. Some of them I don't have names on the picture, so might rely on some of our viewers out there to say, well, who they really are, because truth nuts, I don't know many of them. Okay, here we go. This lady is Tayana Taylor, and that's just the back part of her dress. So what do you make of that?
Yeah. So you get, looking at the structure, um, to me, it very is reminiscent of Order of Phoenix or a phoenix bird. It looks like the feathers. But that gets into too the symbology of the seraphim. You know, when you get into the order of the Phoenix, the order of the Golden Dawn, the order of Melchizedek, they're going to be very aware of, you know, of the upper structures of entities, you know, which were former seraphim, cherubs, and there's going to be a worship of those angelic beings. So um, to me, this, you know, when I see it, it says to me very much, you know, a phoenix ascending or rising. And even the way that they display the carpet, you know, it looks like ashes, it's ascending from the ashes. They will use tiered gardens, tiered levels to represent, you know, ascension and elevation. And in fact, that can even be used in we've talked about some of the other um, events, like where you had Sam Smith, where he was declaring his, um, you know, that he was entering into the grand high priest competitions and was declaring blasphemies and that he was running for the South. So this can even be some of that, you know, is this an outright declaration? She's Order of the Phoenix. She's wanting to ascend in position wise, maybe Grand High Priestess position for Southern Quadrant. And she's going to enter into a season now of battling at different areas. And, you know, the tiered garden look is representing places where battles occur. Um, if it's a particular tiered garden, you know, you're going to find this down in Florida area at a certain mansion that has these gardens. So very interesting. She may be declaring that exact spot.
Wow. That just feels creepy to me. Really does.
Yeah.
Here's a picture of her face.
And you said that was Tiana Taylor.
Yes.
Yeah. And we see you can sometimes get these hats, like when we talked about the crest, the different connection to different orders. You know, we see some things here that are interesting because the characteristics of the attire carries over. Like we saw, you know, Sam Smith all of a sudden wearing these bubble type clothing, the bubble pants. We see that same bubble look in her shoulders, yet you have very much like a Victorian type cape. Um, you see, you know, a very prominent, pronounced red flower there. Um, you know, you see what kind of looks like on the other side of her lapel a red rose, which can be connected. We've talked about the breeder programs, how there's four main rose colors or flower colors, and what they represent with the breeder programs. That, you know, the red's going to be connected to Rosicrucians, and they're going to be raising up males that are high breeding stock within the system. Is this part of her declaration? We also see pearls on her lapel, which is going to connect to your orders of Melchizedek. Red is often seen with high priestesses, but yet can also be seen as part of the coloring for the southern quadrants for the grand high priests and priestesses. We see the fedora hat. Usually there is a connection to other countries with that and trafficking through other countries, particularly Colombia. Um, then we see the prominent feather. When we see like that quill type pen feather, there is an order within the system, you know, that will be connected to presidential lines. You'll see it displayed, but you get the quill and pen orders. So is that all part of it? We see definitely some lace there, interesting lace work that is in, you know, kind of your I just call it the Ashtaroth swirl. You know, this to me would not say necessarily escort. I really believe this is a proclamation that she's in a running for position for Grand High Priestess of the South. But we shall see what happens in days to come.
She looks broken to me. I mean, if I look at her face and her eyes, just her expression, it just feels to me
I
she's
wouldn't
just
say
had
broken, I would say cold.
I just feel like she's had a
That cold
hammering, you
feeling.
know. I feel like they've come down on her very hard prior to
Yeah.
this. It just sad, really sad to
Yeah.
me.
Well, the blasphemies are not, you know, depending on if she declares herself light or dark magic. You know, if it's light magic, they're going to go through sufferings. I've talked about, you know, one of those rituals that I saw for Grand High Priest with the sufferings where at that, uh, you know, one of the locations, the garden things that they go through, you know, is the uh, we'll just call it the ritual with the burdens, where you know they'll be chained, they'll have a burden on their back, and then you know the way the garden is set up is that it literally has like these cement trenches that all stem from a middle fountain area. Um, and what they find is, you know, when they get there, they'll hear in the trenches their loved ones chained, and they'll start to fill those trenches with water. And they have to, you know, there's no way to save everyone. I'll just put it that way. And what the system is looking for, you know, is that you will choose not to save any. Um, you know, that you'll have no leverage, nothing that binds you in any way. Um, but they expect, you know, most people's natural reaction in those sufferings is at least to try to save one, you know, which is still permitted, but they'll look for those who aren't going to save any. That's part of the, you know, the trial and the suffering. Um, but you know, they'll also go through a crucifixion and have to raise themselves from the dead. Um, you know, and that's the light side. The dark side of that, the blasphemies, is much different and far worse. So, you know, it looks like she's declaring herself dark side, but we'll see. You know,
Yeah,
not
feels
sure
that
on
way.
that. We'll see what comes. Yeah.
Someone was actually just saying Kate Warner in the comments also, I think confirming what you were saying. I remember the ritual, they have to save someone from their family to pass. I'm
Yeah, I
like,
talked about that
that's
ritual in the past. Yep.
that's like Sophie's Choice. You know the movie Sophie's Choice, right? Where she
I
has to
haven't
choose.
seen that one, no.
Gosh, that was so haunting. Meryl Streep actually acted. I think we're going back the 70s or 80s, but she's in the Holocaust, and they make her choose one of her children. So she has to choose one to take and one that she has to leave behind, who
Yep.
obviously gets killed. I mean, gosh, what a thing. Anyway,
Yep.
yeah, we have Lewis Hamilton, the Formula One driver.
Yep. So you'll see the white suits. Let's go first to the white banners, the white color. You may see it as white ribbons in the system. We'll see it connected to a lot of the crests, a lot of the dioceses, a lot of churches. You'll see a white ribbon that goes underneath their sign, their logo. All of that being a homage to Lucifer. That, you know, that's one of its meanings, representing Lucifer as the great white light. Um, Where you'll also see it is your upper level. You'll have your Rotarians. You'll see them at the parades where, you know, they're marching in their white suits. So white suits usually is going to connect to your Rotarians. Um, you know, the berets are interesting because you get different color berets. Um, Usually those are going to connect to sovereign military. Um, you know, you get different military connections with the berets as well. Um, you know, so, you know, we have to remember these people in the Brotherhood, they can sit in multiple circle groups, including both the Brotherhood side as well as the sovereign military. Usually, your white is going to be connected to Golden Dawn as well um, in those upper levels. So,
What does this have to do with, I was thinking the freak-off parties, Diddy's freak-off parties? Would there be any connection that everyone had to be in white?
yeah, there could be. You know, it could have to do with them being Golden Dawn. You know, if they're doing having special orders within that party, having special rituals that they're doing or catering to specific groups, that can happen.
Okay. Okay, Coleman Domingo. I don't know who he is, but he looks very druidish to me. I think he's trying to become a
Yeah,
druid.
this is interesting. It could very much be druids. Usually, your druid are not going to look like they've got capes like this, but you know what it says more to me. Usually, you get your seraphim look. That dark blue, that white, usually is going to connect to your polar star groups, the order of the polar star. Within that succession, the second order, you get the order of the seraphim. And often in the Golden Dawn, the seraphim can be displayed like that with the wings promenading down. So is he representing order the seraphim, order of the polar star? Possibly. Then we see this kind of interesting lace work. The more intricate the lace, you know, the more layers that can be accessed. To me, you know, this isn't saying an escort for these orders. I really think that in a lot of the Met Gala, they're displaying the upcoming dams and madams who are going to oversee the escorts. Some of them could be upper level escorts, but I think really you're seeing a display of different positions in the system and you know if there's been people kind of having to step out who have been in those positions for a long time, you know, they're scared of what's coming down the pipeline with arrests. Is there a new declaration going on of who the current madam and dams are going to be? I think that's what we're seeing, but go ahead to the next one there.
Madonna.
Yeah, Madonna has been a madam for a long time. Um, you know, one of the things with when you get into the Grand High Priest and Grand High Priestesses competitions is that you will get individuals that will sponsor them. You know, we saw with Sam Smith, Madonna at that event dressed like a German woman, military woman with a gray suit, um, you know, braids and all that jazz, displaying that she was one of the big sponsors. And she's been a big sponsor for a long time, as well as a madam, meaning that, you know, she's running high celebrity escort systems for upper level members for different events. Um, and in fact, you know, her escort services go on tours, you know, to throughout the different countries. Here, you know, we see her very much rather in German attire, you know, dressed in the white suits. We talked about how that represents Rotarians. Um, the white flower we see on her lapel, we see two things. We see she's got both a white flower as well as a white bow tie. Um, and we see the hands covered with gloves. So there's a couple interesting things with her attire. You know, the Rotarians are known for kind of being those that are going to sponsor girls that will be prime wives to elite men. Um, you know, in that they're wanting these women to really be breeders, whether they really can have children or not, they want them as breeders and for breeder specs within the system as wives. And you'll see the Rotarians display the girls that they sponsor at the local parades where, you know, they'll all march and they'll have the girls that they've each sponsored, they'll have some sort of contest and you're going to have one girl stand out and win. So that's what the white rose represents. Um, you know, so then you have to ask, okay, what girls is she sponsoring this year? Who is she elevating, right? Who does she all of a sudden, you know, we've seen throughout the years, some of the girls she's elevated. Britney Spears was a big one. Um, you know, then we see the white bow tie. Now, the bow ties are very significant because that symbol of like the hourglass or the bow tie, you know, depending, it looks like an hourglass if it's turned that way vertical. If it's horizontal, it looks like the bow tie. That symbol represents the councilmen. Okay, so Madonna's kind of shifting here. She's going to be catering to councilmen. Usually, your upper level councils and chambers are going to be known by odd numbers. Your council of 5, your council of 7, your council of 9, your council of 11, 13, 21. Your council of 7, which is known as the Ennead, which is an Egyptian bird god. You'll notice them by their bow ties. A lot of times they're going to be connected with the Ennead to your Audubon Society. Okay, so Madonna may be catering to Audubon Society is one of them. Your Council 21, known as the Black Tuxedos, often has the symbology of a half black, half white bow tie. So you get that, you know, your Priory of Zion, some of those members, you'll see them with bow ties. They're connected to the councils too. So Madonna's going to be catering or raising, having escorts now. She's going to be providing for council, special chambers, special groups. The white gloves is interesting too because now we don't see her having a veil that we can see yet, but you've got a special group of women that are recruited that are only for Lucifer or Satan himself. They're known as the brides of Satan. Their attire will usually be the gloves. Usually you will see the full gloves with them at times. You'll see them with dresses and you'll see a lacy veil, but usually it's just like a half veil when they're dressed in their attire. They'll just have the veil completely over their head. Now it's different than like not people we've seen with your funeral veils, but they'll kind of look like they're a funeral veil, but it, you know, you'll just get somebody, you'll see them, like you'll see them in the Catholic churches. All of a sudden, this woman that looks like she's out of place, out of time, dressed with these long, you know, or sometimes they will have the short gloves. A lot of times you'll see them dressed like in a black business suit, and you'll see kind of just this odd looking veil over their head. May cover the whole face, may not, but that's for brides of Satan. So it's interesting the attire we see her in. You know, what has she got going on this year? I think she's displaying, which if she's displaying this, we can probably bet, you know, coming up uh, around March, they do the marriage to the beast ceremonies, which, you know, March and May, you can have the ceremonies where they're going to bring in the next generation of brides of Satan um, for Satan. And usually there's not many um, within the United States, but is this a year where they're going to be doing rituals to have brides of Satan they've recruited, and you'll start to see them appearing at parties and maybe connected to parties that she's part of. You know, it could be a declaration of a bride of Satan, that a new and upcoming bride of Satan that, you know, that will be considered an untouchable woman. If she shows up at the party, everybody knows she's only for Satan or Lucifer. She'll be his host for the night in whatever human form he takes. Yeah, so you get interesting things. Go ahead to the next one. So,
Ducci, whoever this is.
Gucci, yeah, she's got those
Yeah.
cigars. You know, it's interesting that we're seeing, I don't know if that's a Colombian cigar, but we saw the fedora hat too. And I'd already kind of mentioned Colombia. Is there some stuff coming up in Colombia this year? Is maybe there's special ritual, um, you know, rituals that are going to happen for upcoming ceremony? That's possible. Um, you know, we're seeing a lot of stuff with that. Um, Here we see some different things. Notice like Madonna had more that your straight line bow tie, you know, which is going to represent usually your councilman, your Priory of Zion's upper levels. But here we see more of like your frilly bow ties. Those can be connected to your escorts. So is this a person displaying her escort things? We know, you know, different symbols we see on there. We see the kind of the short, even crosses. We see like diamond shapes. We see circles with points on in the middle, which can represent white gold, also can represent different forms of magic. We see the checkered look, which, you know, we know we see with the Masonic lodges. You'll have sacred ground or summoning ground marked by those checkered floors. When you see the equal black and white, it usually means there's a reflection room that can be accessed below. When you see the checkered floors where it looks more white than black, it usually means access is above. So is this all ways to communicate, you know, where the party is, where what's happening is, where the rituals are going to take place, and how to access those? It's very plausible. Um, you know, so um, we'll just keep going, you know.
Question that I also had, is there anything significant about the Cuban cigar? I mean, I know the best cigars are Cuban, from what I'm told. I don't smoke them. But Cuban cigars are very well known, so it might just be that. But is there any specific reason that she's carrying a Cuban cigar?
Well, I think that's what, you know, we saw something kind of alluding to Cuba before.
Right.
You know, Cuba, Colombia areas, I think representing possible places where events, where rituals may happen.
Right.
Yeah.
My thoughts exactly. Sure. Okay. Yes, she. No, this is Taraji.
Again, we see the white suit. You see it a little bit different here. you see the collar going all the way up. Um, you know, when you get into your grand high priest and priestesses, that was a common look. You know, when they attend events at times, you'll see them in what looks like almost like older Victorian clothing with the garments going all the way up, you know, representing that their status, their, you know, grand high priest or priestess. Is this a creative way that she's displaying that? It's possible. Um, you know, we also see her with a staff, which is significant because, you know, the staffs can represent wizards as well as sorceresses, which a lot of your grand high priest or priestesses will be classified magically as wizards or sorceresses. Um, you know, we also see the kind of the shorter fedora type hat, um, I think representing, you know, when you see the white like that, um, you know, it you can get into the colors then interpreting which quadrant are they connected to. Your white, your white is going to be connected to north. White and green can be your northern quadrants. Black and red are your southern. Yellow is usually connected to your eastern, and blue connected to the west quadrants.
You know what I'm finding interesting, yeah? And I'm just going to pop over quickly. If you look at Lewis Hamilton, white suit, white headgear. Now you look at Madonna, white suit, masculine. There's a lot of the white, you know, that white suit. Okay, she's not wearing headgear. Neither is this one, but the white suit. This one's a white suit again, and yes, she has the fedora. But it's almost that feeling of the feminine being drawn over to the masculine. Is there anything in that, you know, in suits?
Like it can be unspoken homages to entities. Your feminine with the blend of the masculine is going to be a homage to Baphomet.
Right. And it's white as well, right? So,
yeah, Lucifer. I think Lucifer is the main one they're paying the homage to.
okay. I don't
Now
know who
this
this is.
you, yeah,
Kiara.
you get. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to say this girl's name is Kiara. I don't know who she is, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know her. I'm not familiar with her either, but we see some interesting things in her attire. You know, we see the black, we see the gold. Um, you know, you can get, well, let me go into the next thing. We also see this big drape that looks like kind of what you would find, you know, more with your Sanhedrin, Israel, more of your Arabic countries, you know, type design with, you know, almost like your mantle, your robe, um, from those cultures, um, you know, which you can see that attire with some of the individuals in your higher levels of Kabbalah. You'll get the Jewish connection in their Torah or reverse Torah studies. You know, is her outfit with the black representing, you know, that she's high level Kabbalist. Um, you know, black then is going to represent more your reverse Torah magic, but um, you also get the gold predominantly at the breast area, which is interesting. Um, you know, is that representing almost like a breastplate?
I was going to say that.
Yeah, you get your white gold as well, you know, which is, we've talked about the white gold and what that represents, you know, the ascension. You get a special elite group of women we talked about with Madonna in the past, where she wore the Valkyrie helmet look. You know, could this be representing a Valkyrie breastplate? You know, you see in the Valkyrie breastplate the very defined gold around the breasts, you know, which again would still connect to Kabbalah, and
Right.
magical specialty. So
The train would obviously remind me somewhat of a bride, a wedding dress. And the train being white, would that mean anything?
I would not, usually you're going to get more of a lace or a chiffon type material with that. This is very prominent, made to look like, you know, your certain attire connected to Kabbalah, connected to Israel, connected to, you know, your Middle Eastern countries, with the Kabbalah. So that's why I would put it there versus a bride. I wouldn't. Could she be a bride of Satan? Maybe, but I don't see your typical bride of Satan look with her attire.
Okay. Now, here's an interesting one, Jess, who I think you might have personal
Yeah.
experience with. Huma Abedin.
Huma Abedin. Yep, and it's interesting. We see her very simple, streamlined dressed. We see the white on top, the black on the bottom. Again, could this be a creative way? Um, you know, turn sideways, you get that bow tie look, Council of 21. Um, you know, we see kind of your diamonds at the ears, also looking more kind of like your flame looks, black and white up there. Um, you know, we know Huma is connected to your upper levels orders in the system, Order of Phoenix, Order of Golden Dawn, as well as Order of Melchizedek. We know her connection to Hillary Clinton. Um, you know, we know she's involved in rituals and different ceremonies with Hillary as well. So, high level, you know, high priestess in the system. Um, you know, white and black, you know, could it represent her connection both with the northern quadrant states, you know, in ritual grounds out of, you know, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, Chicago area, as well as also connections to southern, which, you know, would be your Louisianas, your Texas, um, other southern states here in the United States, but it could be all of that, or she could just be, you know, a special guest at the party. Um, but I think, you know, behind the scenes, you know, are there spiritual as well as physical brothels that Hillary was connected to? Absolutely. You know, trafficking girls, using girls as sex slaves. You know, one of the biggest areas being Benghazi. You got a lot through the Middle East. Uh, you know, is Huma Abedin, you know, one of those individuals as well, trafficking children to the elite? You know, I believe absolutely she is. So it, I wouldn't necessarily classify her position as a madame, um, but could she be in that role, catering both to the north and the south? It's very possible.
Well, what tea can you spill on her? Is there any tea? Just a quick cup you can spill.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have heard rumors of frazzle drip, with Hillary Clinton, and you know, I would identify the individual in that particular video with Hillary as Huma Abedin. Um, you know, we know she's got some high connections, including, um, you know, George Soros' son, and you know, I think she definitely was involved in similar brotherhood activities like Hillary, which include, you know, the sexual exploitation, rape, satanic ritual, satanic murder, uh, cannibalism, adrenochrome. Uh, you know, it's beyond harvesting, adrenoconsumption. Is she an adreno addict? Absolutely. Um, you know, so we'll air some
Sure.
of her her goods.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. Any just to be in Hillary's vicinity, I think must be a trauma enough to drive you to any addiction.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, what is she going
This,
to bring to the party? You know, like any
mm,
party she's going to be a part of, think of, you know, what she engages in. So that's what's going to
yeah,
be available at the party wherever she's at, you know.
sure. Yeah, we have Sabrina Carpenter.
Yeah, so with this, we see very prominently kind of that a dark chocolate color. Um, you get different things with that in the system. You know, can be connected to some of your orders with friars, certain Jesuit groups. Um, you know, this attire, like, you know, you'll see Masons, different Jesuit Catholic groups bringing in escorts. Um, you know, there's some videos surfacing of people like Lady Gaga, you know, and it's common to see kind of this um, leotard type look with escorts and high level escorts.
Mm.
So I would kind of put it, you know, it's interesting because even think of like the last show that we just did with the Decode of the Pope. You see under that mitre hat, you kind of see the scarf, the trailing scarf type things. Um,
Mm.
you know, so
Right.
I would very much put this in, you know, as anything she'll be connected to, it's going to be catering to those order orders that are specific to friar groups. Um, you know,
Jeez.
people that are connected to the specialty Jesuit groups throughout the country.
I'm afraid she just looks to me like she's zombied out there. She's standing like a zombie. It's
Yeah.
like so,
Well,
so empty.
yeah, you also see her, the collar, like collars can be a way that they just, that was kind of their older way of displaying escorts, and you'd see it a lot with the children, the hierarchy children in the photos, the paintings that they would display these big elaborate collars. Um, and we also see on hers it looks like there's two pins, um, you know, that are close that go high up. We talked about, you know, that behind the ears, the back of the neck can be a way where they mark tattoos or put certain markings. Is this a
Right.
way that they're creatively doing that? Um, if you follow that, it also looks, you know, that whole chest part with the collar can also look like a Valkyrie type um, helmet, you know,
Yeah.
which would tell me the escorts are being catered to upper level women who are connected to those type of things, you know, like Madonna. So, you know, is this part of the
Mm.
escorts belonging to Madonna's group? Maybe, um,
Poor
you know, that
girl.
there'll be higher level escorts. The six buttons can
Mm.
represent stuff as well. Um, you know, is it representing dimensions? Is it representing like cuts in a diamond, the sixth dimension in sexual magic, you know?
Okay, next is, I'm not sure who this is. She looks familiar though. Does anyone know who this is, please? But again, yeah, we're looking at a male type outfit. You know, what happened to
Somewhat,
women's?
yeah, somewhat. Now, here's where it gets
Mm,
interesting because the cut, you get kind of that midriff area um, that almost looks like the old Egyptian, the Roman type outfitry, which that often displays priestesses. And the cut or where how they have their toga-like dress represents, you know, what priestess groups they're connected to. Is it priestess of Delphi, priestess of Melissa? Um, you get priestesses of the Nile. Usually, those priestess groups are going to have, um, either you get the Egyptian emblem up top, which we're not seeing. What are we seeing up top? We're seeing tuxedo, right? Um, we're seeing a white rose, which connects to your Rotarians. And we're seeing all the gathering at the waist. Um, so to me, this would say escort. Escort to who? She's displaying several groups. She goes both ways. We'll put it that way, right? She she may escort for some of your higher level, um, as well as those that are Rotarians, uh, females, and priestesses, females. So this would very much say to me, she's willing to be an escort for anyone at, at kind of your mid upper levels um, in sexual magic. And the black, with the white kind of being less prominent, to me, if this is representing magical spectrums or abilities, she's going to do both, but her primary specialty is going to be black magic. That would be my guess. Could it also be connected to southern quadrants? Very much so. I wouldn't say this though. I wouldn't read her attire and say this is a grand high priestess of the South, nor would I necessarily, I mean, she could be a high priestess in the South, but um, I think more connected to your escorts for high priestesses, specializing in black magic. But oh, Chanti, you have to unmute.
sorry. I was just saying again, it's interesting to notice, if we go back to the 50s, 60s, these beautiful, and 10 years ago, 5 years ago even, these beautiful long ball gowns that these women were wearing. I mean, really beautiful. No matter what your belief is, those are beautiful dresses, right? That these
Yeah,
women are
yeah.
wearing. And now we're seeing recently such a draw towards this masculine suit and tie look. And I'm
The
sure a lot
mix,
of
the
these,
homage to Baphomet.
right. But I also think a lot of these actors and or actresses, I actually think a lot of them are born male. So again, it's that whole, I don't know, man, it's so bizarre.
You get
That sort
one
of
more thing that,
inversion.
yeah, you get one more thing about her that's sticking out. You get that piece of hair at the top. And when you see that, especially with somebody that's looking very childlike, very playful, there's an old saying that they would use a lot in the system. Um, you know, it's like an old poem, but it was there's a little girl with a curl right in the middle of her forehead. When she was good, she was very good. And when she was bad, she was horrid, you know? So think about that, that,
Mhm.
just the display of the light, the dark magic, and what she's presenting that she offers. I think all of that is the statements that she's making.
Wow. You can say so much with an outfit. Wow.
Right? You never had an idea, right?
Now, interesting to me,
Oh, Pamela Anderson.
but aren't you fascinated by her recent transformation, where she refuses to wear any makeup anymore? And she's kind
Right?
of gone
Yes,
back to,
interesting.
and this little, who's that woman, Mia Farrow? She looks very Mia Farrow there to me, right? So
Yeah.
she's now showing herself as someone who's outgrown her bad girl days. She's now pure and clean. No makeup, no hair, beautiful gown, simple, no boobies flashing anymore. Um, she's this transformed person. Now,
Socialite.
yeah,
Scary socialite. I, I would have to see more for me to believe she's out. I think it's a change of a
right,
form of remarketing herself from one type of madamery to the other. We know the connection, you know, the pornography, that whole background. Has she now elevated to be a madame? And she, instead of, people going through the horrific things that she went through with the pornography, is she now, remarketing it, your classy escorts? I think very much so. We see her also, her attire, you see a lot of the grand high priestesses, the high priestesses, the socialites of, the 70s, the 80s, Gloria Vanderbilt, your Mary Lou Whitney, all of them wearing the same type of dressing, um,
right.
clothing style. Um, to me, it says Mary Lou Whitney, Grand High Priestess of the South. That's exactly, even her haircut, it's all saying to me
Yeah,
Mary Lou Whitney. With that, the silver would be connected to your moon magic, your blue light spectrum, um, which is going to get more into your water magical skills and abilities. But I'd be very concerned as to where is she located, what quadrant, what is she now doing, what humanitarian efforts is she declaring, and how does that connect with who she's providing services to? Um, you know,
I, I would almost read that, if I'm looking at her transformation, and again, this is speculation,
yeah,
but I speculate a lot here anyway. It's almost like she's offering a fresh new service. If I read her, and that to me would almost be like kids, like innocent, no makeup. You know what I'm saying? Short, childlike hair. So I don't know. There's something about this that just does not gel with me.
yeah. And you
Um,
get that haircut, and again, you know, I want to believe she's had a transformation. I'll say that, that's my hope for everybody in the system, is that they would come out. But we still see her very much engaged. When you look at the occultic um, history, the way that they style things, you have, that type of haircut, which was almost like a bowl cut. The blonde, longer hair bowl cut was very much your Scandinavian boys. Um, they would usually dress the royal boys Scandinavian, Norwegian, Swedish descent,
Aryan
Switzerland.
boys,
Yeah,
Aryan
and
boys.
they would dress them with that, and then your blue, usually with a blue velvet, um,
There you
clothing and
go.
attire. So
There you
um,
go. It makes a lot of sense to me. So
instead of
she's
adult
been,
women, is she now engaging in the Aryan male boy porn? We
you
gotta
see,
honestly ask. We have to ask the question.
you see. That's exactly where my thoughts are going. Because if you look at that, and she gives that ice queen vibe, right? If you're watching those movies with the ice queens, they kind of look similar to that. And
Mhm.
especially with the color of her frock with a glittery stuff.
Which, what's a
That to
form
me,
of water magic? You have
right.
ice. Is she training in ice magic? With that, there's going to be a connection to, your Ragnarok up in the Greenland areas. You also have a spiritual gate connected between Norway and Sweden. Is there going to be, connections with that with ice magic? It's very plausible. But ice
That's
magic falls under your moon water magic. Um,
that totally resonates with me. That's what I couldn't figure out. I thought, no, Pammy. Firstly, she wouldn't be hanging out at these events if she wasn't connected. I mean,
yeah,
she would not be remarketed, you know, as this wow. Look at this chick. I mean, she's probably around about my age, maybe a bit younger. But
yeah,
suddenly, you know, what woman in her late 50s will come out confident, especially when you've had her status, looking clean and pure and oh no, please, they're such liars. Oh,
yeah.
they make me so tired. Okay, let's look at the next one. Lauren Hill. Again, male, look at this. It's this male suits with feet like a wedding train. There's a lot of that, the male with the train at the back, right? Whether it's the
Yeah,
scarf.
not wedding train. I mean, think about your grand high priestesses.
Yeah.
We're talking quadrant leaders. You get a lot of that, queen type dress, um, attire look with the suit. Now, the yellow is very prominent as well because when we've seen a lot of display of different um, roses in this event, uh, which connects to breeder programs. We're talking dames and dams, those who are running those programs. Yellow roses get into those that, uh, you know, are going to be connected to the priestesses, the breeding of priestesses. So is she one of the, grand dames of the priestesses? Very plausible. Um, that's what that would represent. And we see, very much that royalty look, but she's kind of displaying it in some different ways, instead of a scepter, um, like a scepter, a cane. You see the umbrella,
Mm.
which that can also be used to look like a cane or look like that scepter representing rule. These are just different ways that they're displaying the same symbols, representing their authority and what they're doing. Um,
What would the whole Mary Poppins thing? Because that gives me Mary Poppins vibes. What would Mary Poppins kind of like? Where would she be fitting in?
well, you had Mary Poppins symbology representing, air magic, the ability to fly. You get with that, you do have air cities. Um, Yellow can represent east quadrants, but also magically represents, those that specialize in air magic. Um,
Right. And yellow
you
is
know,
air. Yellow is the colorment, the color for the element of air. And
correct.
this
Yeah.
umbrella, Mary Poppinsy. Yeah, that one's into air magic. Hmm.
Yeah. And what we see the man wearing, that would
Yeah.
be typical of your Masonic kings. They'll have
Hmm.
different headpieces. Some, are completely filled in. Your escorts usually will have, they'll be like it'll be like a braided band, usually one or two colors or just white. Um, but that hat piece would be somebody connected to, um, you know, what they're going to consider your kings, your jacks. Um, you know, so even his looking more that Masonic look of those that are going to be connected to jacks, and all of your um, those that, you know, are connected to the rituals, your grand high priest, grand high priestesses are often going to be coordinating the events, the ceremonies, the rituals for the system. They'll hold those throughout the quadrant. You know, they're going to be connected to priestesses. You know, your grand high priest and priestess are going to run the events and coordinate those, which includes the sacrifices, and the prostitution. That's what they do. Um, you know, there we see in that second one, you know, we see she's wearing some sort of glove, again, all in that yellow coloring, and we see her holding that object, you know, over the eye, representing the one eye.
She just looks evil. Seriously, look at that eye staring at you. That eye is evil. That's an evil eye. Look at it. And if I compare that face to the first girl in the red, that girl in the red looked completely shattered to me. I mean, she just looked broken to me. This one is as sharp as a razor. This one is so on point. She's like knows exactly where she's going. This one gives me the creeps. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
I would not like to meet her on a windy day or a dark street corner. No.
Now I want to explain one more thing about the yellow, because when you get into the grand high priestesses, the madams, all of that, um, your yellow beyond the magic color can also represent the Eastern quadrant. Um, but usually your yellow is going to be more of like a darker gold, you know, a darker gold, a mustard yellow. Kind of your darker yellows are more going to be the East, kind of like what we see with our flags, our eagles. Um, Usually when you see this light weird color, you know, yellow, that usually is going to be connected to the breeding programs, the roses, the breeding of priestesses. You can get more your mid yellows when it's displayed with the yellow rose, but this usually is connected to that color specifically with the roses in the priestess breeding. So versus the
Anything to do
Eastern quadrant, but
anything to do with a golden age, maybe?
I wouldn't necessarily classify this as a golden color, but it, you know, it could deal with the golden age. Um, you know, so
Okay.
it could be all those things. You know, is she running for a grand high priestess of the Eastern quadrant position? Possible. You know, it's possible, but I wouldn't, you know, we'd have to see more behind the scenes to see if she's actually declaring for a position for that or not. But um,
So if she's going for the Grand High Priestess of the Eastern Quadrant, that's Beyonce's position, from what I
well,
currently
you
know.
can have multiple
Right.
priestesses,
Okay.
yeah, grand highs. You can have multiple. So she could be running as a secondary, as a third, if some of the other positions are up for running. You
Right.
know,
Okay.
you've got Beyonce, you've got Lori Cabot Kent, who's currently holding a position. You have, um, you know, some other individuals who, you know, they're getting up there in age. Is Lori thinking of retiring? Maybe, you know, maybe. So maybe these are runner ups for those positions.
Sure. Okay, yeah, we have Nicole Kidman, who we know was born a
Yeah.
boy, for sure. Um, she's
High
more black.
priestess. Yeah. Um,
She looks,
yeah, you're black, and just knowing, knowing about her, she's your upper levels in the system: Order of Phoenix, Order of Golden Dawn, Order of Melchizedek. Again, with her, like Huma Abedin, you're going to get into a lot of wickedness, a lot of dark magic. Um, you know, is she
okay,
trafficking children? I absolutely believe she is. Um,
yeah,
you know, I wouldn't class it, she's more your high priestess, not, I
yeah,
wouldn't classify her as a grand dame per se, but
yeah.
going to be more in your high priestess line.
Okay.
Harris, I'm going to be the first to say it. Harris. Shanti's like, I don't know who that is. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Until I saw her up, I mean, seriously, there's Kamala. Ooh, guys, we had to put Kamala on for you. Okay, what on earth is going on here?
Yeah, the white, the black. We know she's not a councilman. Is she a high priestess? Possible. Again, you've got an individual that there might be a lot more to the story going on, uh, connected to um, worship of Baphomet, transgenderism, maybe. Um, but, with her, um, we know that there's a connection to certain sovereign military groups. Um, is she somebody uh, providing services for, providing children to, particularly, who wears the black capes and the white capes that hang over one side of the shoulder? That's going to be your Knights of Malta, which is, the sovereign military group she's highly connected to. Um, so I think that that's a connection. For those that are high priestesses, one of their common signs also is that they will wear scarves. Whether where that scarf hangs, it could be loosened to the side, it could be thrown to the back, it could be just draped and hanging over both sides of the back. That's common for your high priestesses to wear scarves like that. Black prominent, is going to be um, south. Uh, red, also could be south, but red is more your typical, like at the 4 times a year, when everybody shows up, your grand high priestesses usually will wear the colors of their quadrant. So they would show up in like the yellow or green, white, black, blue, red. Your high priestesses usually are going to show up in red with a red scarf. You could have black with the black scarves, um, but you can get the different colors showing up.
I'm wondering why she'd be standing in front of her couch as well, which is the thought I had in my mind, while everyone's in front of, I don't know, is there, I mean, I know this picture.
They caught her getting ready.
Yeah,
I mean, it
it
looks like
is.
a hotel room to me.
But
Is she
that's what,
saying, where she come to me? I'm not
yes,
even going to come to the party. Come to me. What's
come
going
to
on in the
mama.
hotel room, Harris? That's what I want to know.
We're just having couch time. We'll be couch potatoes.
Right? Not even staged,
Yeah,
like where
exactly.
it looks nice. It looks like she was sitting and stood up.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Look, with both the pillows right next to her. Anyway, okay. Let's see who's next. That is, I don't know who that is.
yeah, we don't know his name, but I know he's done a series, Bridgerton. I think he's one of the actors for that. Again, we see him in a complete red suit, red shoes, red leather shoes or faux leather shoes. Uh, is this a so there's a couple things with this because it's not just the suit. We see a suit coat all in red. Um, is he like Sam Smith declaring he's running for Grand High Priest status of the Southern Quadrants? It's very plausible. Um, the capes is a indicator for Grand High Priest, Grand High Priestess. That's very much what this looks like to me. The Red Shoe Club is a scary thing. You had your Pope also had red shoes up until a certain point. We know what that represents, and usually there's a child involved in that. We talked about Gloria Vanderbilt and her taxidermy of humans. So you get those that are into that. That very much is what this says to me. You also see instead of a bow tie, you see the emblem very much at the chest there. Um, you know, that is it's a common place of jewelry for grand high priests. Um, you know,
Okay. Sure. Okie
yeah.
dokie. Yeah, we have, I don't know who that is.
I don't know either, but I very much, we see some different things. Again, we're getting the long flowy sash, which could be like a scarf. We see almost like it's like the headdress with a long scarf. Could it be a high priestess? Possible. Um, to me, this attire says more escort. And you've got some
Yeah.
interesting things, like at her chest area, we see the black ribbon, and we see the sides of the suit coat going up, but almost like your cross, your pointed crosses for Knights of Malta. Um, to me, this would say I cater to sovereign military Knights of Malta upper levels. Um, you get more of your female escort look, especially with the leotard look, the leggings going up, and the shoes. Um, all of that says to me certain things. Um, you get your I like her. I used to like what were they called? The saddle shoes, the black and the white, but you got the
Mm.
saddle shoe look, which was often a way, saddle shoes was a way that they would indicate also, um, who were escorts. Um, so they could identify that way. But that's kind of what she says to me. Whoever she is, she's under one of the grand madames, probably of the South, and high level escort.
Okay. All right. And I don't know who that is.
Yeah, this says to me too, high level male escort. Um, you get all sorts of things. You know, again, um, you get certain dress with him. You get the very low shirt collar, but you get the high waistband there. Um, who wears that? You'll get that with some of your Shriner attire. Um, I would say this could be male escort for Shriners. But we also could get another thing because you do see one of the emblems, a badge there, um, that badge looking like, you know, like they'll display different things in the starburst badges. Um, you know, can be somebody who's not just escort. Um, you know, we see also that he's got the cane. He's wearing a lot of rings. Um, this very well could be, you know, somebody declaring for, you know, Grand High Priest status for the running for Southern Quadrants. Um, if so, then this look can also be used in vampirism. Um,
Yeah,
you know, but
he looks like he's giving off vampire vibes, and
yeah,
definitely it's like he's the pimp of the what are they? Not prostitutes. You call them prostitutes?
escorts.
Escorts. Sorry.
Yeah,
So
could
he's
he
the
be
pimp of
one of
the
the
escorts.
dams for the escorts? That's possible
Right.
too,
He
you
looks
know.
very pimpish, and he's got that staff in his hand again, which kind of tells you he can wield a bit of his power if he wants to.
Yeah.
Whack them back into shape because he's so cool.
But usually you're
Right.
not gonna see the dams are not gonna usually have the cane or the scepter or the wizard um,
Right.
you know, staff. You know, that would be more connected to your grand high priest or those levels. So he very well could be leveling up. Um,
Mm.
you know, but you would also see some of the same elements that he has in the escort clothing. Um, you know, but I think it's probably more he's in the running for something of the South, which is interesting to have so many declarations or, you know, why all of a sudden are we seeing some people coming over out? I think it's because you had to have a shift in positions. Um, you know, you have to all of a
Looks like
sudden have positions that need filling. Somebody's got to do the job, and this is their creative way of displaying who's going to do the job now.
it looks like there's a whole lot of positions that need to be filled in the system. So I'm wondering where everyone else has gone.
Yeah, curious, huh? Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, well, we're nearly done. So we have now Rihanna. Rihanna
Right.
again, pregnant, and again wearing boy clothes, a combination of the boy and the girl clothes, all black and white.
The black suit.
And this
Um,
time she, mm,
yep, very much like a socialite. Again, we see even the suit. If you go back to that
sorry,
picture, the bottom layers of the suit being very much like a priestess dress, um, you know, representing a priestess of something, right? You know, probably of the South with the black. Um, you know, so do you have here priestesses of priest and priestess of South? I believe so. Notice also the picturing that is behind them. You see the two colonnades representing gates of Baal. Um, you know, I don't think that's just a cool picture that they paused him in that spot. I think it's very specific, you know, representing different things.
wow. Okay, yeah, we have. Okay, this is the last one. There's two pictures, but super duper interesting. This to me is the most interesting of the lot. Check this out, everybody.
The
Look at
bubble
that.
box.
Wow, that is Janelle Monáe, whoever that is.
Right. So interesting. You know, to me, this would say a madam um, like Madonna. You've got the very specific, you know, one eye uh, look. Again, we talked about grand high priest and priestesses. We know that the bubble person look has been kind of common for a while. Notice also on the bottom in the red there on the bottom right, um, you get kind of that boxy thumbprint look. That the boxy swirls, is it one of the signs for trafficking. We also know that there's things, different agencies connected to trafficking. Um, the briefcases can be something specific. Um, trafficking what? Uh, Ironically, what kind of comes to mind is we know the IRS had certain briefcases with nuclear weapons. Um, you know,
Ooh.
Nuclear weaponry is something that we talk about with hierarchy children. So do we get people who are trafficking, children as weaponry? Is that maybe what this is saying? It's plausible. Um, so
Or
it's just
weaponizing kids. Could she
yeah,
not
and
be?
you get quantum identifiers like the eye, like the way that the eye thing is done. It reminds me of those scan things where you have to scan your eye. Then you have briefcases which have a lock. You have the thumbprints, which are also a quantum identifier. So all of
Yeah.
that together says something very unique to me, and those that would be behind the scenes moving things as special agents.
Yeah, to me, it's almost like she would be involved with like the weaponization of children. So not necessarily also trafficking, but it's like she'd be the agent to go to the different people to ask them what they want, if you know what I'm saying, the middleman.
Yeah, it's
And the
plausible. I mean, we also see, look at like under where the armpits are. Notice
yeah,
you get those two, like at first I was thinking Eye
yeah,
of
I didn't
Horus,
see
but
that.
you've got it
Yeah.
on the other side, which where else do we see something very similar? We see it in the layout of the structure of the Vatican,
Wow. Look at
you know,
that.
that sign of the
Wow.
serpent, um, the Vatican. So is there a special catering uh, of boys, to the Vatican and Jesuits,
She's like, yeah, she's the agent, and that it's like to me, she would have to do, from
a
what I'm
madam
seeing,
with special assets.
yes, and she would be moving and grooving and making deals. She's part of the deal making or the shuffling, the go-between person. That's how I see her, as the go-between person. Okay, here's
And
the
you have the
last pick.
black and red being, southern quadrants. Um, Even with this, I'd see the white as highlighting, not as emphasizing, certain quadrants. Um, so I would very much put this as, maybe one of the grand dames, grand madams of the for the
Yeah,
southern quadrants, but internationally, maybe going in even into sovereign militaries like the Vatican back and forth.
I mean, this girl, I wouldn't play around with this girl. I think she, she likes to be mean. So what do you make of this part of her dress? I don't know if
I
it,
think still,
how,
we see the emphasis, the little bit change. We see the black and red. Still, I think, representing quadrants. Um, do the four buttons represent something? Does that, is that kind of like the cuts in a diamond display? Um, it's interesting where it's at, you know, where it's positioned. Um, you know, so again, we saw
yeah,
her upper outfit, which could be the male, the swirl, the square swirl, representing the trafficking of boys. Um, you know, is this again right where they're showing the four buttons? Is it specific to be, looking like that? you know, representing male genitalia, maybe, um, you know.
Wow. And also the colors, they're red, white, and black. It's almost the red and black death magic or something like that as well. When you're looking at the different colors of the magic, would that not be displayed in there as well?
Well, you'd get fire,
Hmm.
you know, fire magic with the red. Um, you know, could it get into death and necromancy? That's plausible. Um, you know, here up at the top on her tie too, we see that square symbol as well. Um,
Okay,
yeah.
I'd be quite scared of her.
Why? Rebuke her, Chanti?
Oh,
You
oh,
gonna
no,
let her
sure.
continue to traffic children?
No, definitely not. I mean,
I
it's
think
just, it's
that's
so
definitely what we're
crazy.
seeing, you know.
For sure. And to me, she would definitely hold some sort of, call it senior position, um, yeah, in the system. And it just feels to me like she has no empathy, nothing. There's no empathy there. It's gone, long gone.
Yeah,
Wow.
crazy.
Anyway,
Definitely
wow,
getting more
Jessie,
creative with their attire, you know.
yeah. And I'm just fascinated again. Not once do you see a beautiful feminine ball gown. There's nothing like that. It's all very, and even when it's feminine, there's masculine aspects to it. So there's definitely just in the whole way that they're dressing, it's going towards that, I want to almost say defeminization, but then the males as well are becoming a lot more feminine looking, right? It's much more,
Right.
so it's almost like the two spectrums are coming together. They bring in the two together to meet somewhere, as in exactly that. What are you, male, female, female? I don't care. I'm just a human.
The
I just like being.
steampunk bubble look. Is
Yeah,
there a
exactly.
secret underground cities that connect to that? Um, you know, is there a purpose they're getting kind of the Victorian steampunk look? You know, does it have to do with London? Um, it, was it connected to power outages? Maybe. Who knows? But you get your whole London underground secret cities with that steampunk pipery going on.
Is that worth a topic to talk about?
We could eventually, yeah.
Okay. Wow. Gosh, guys, this is so crazy. And I'm just glad that we get to see what's really going on, because to the rest of the world, it's just crazy celebrities just being over the top and just being creative and artists, right? But we see deeper and further than that. So, wow. Jessie, thank you so, so much again for joining us today and sharing your bountiful knowledge, my word. There's just so much that we learn from you, especially in these decodes and stuff. So thank you so much. Really, really, really appreciate you.
Yeah.
And I just want to say thank you to our beautiful guests who are always here and chatting and keeping us company and giving us answers. And I really appreciate you guys. Really, 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 I do. I really, really, really do. Jessie, before we end off, tell us again what's happening in your world. And I know you've got another workshop coming up for those of us that missed earlier.
I do, yes. So coming up on June 7th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern, I have the Lord Help My Unbelief workshop. And, this workshop is really focused on strengthening our belief and teaching us to exercise our belief with confidence. I think for many of us, we find ourselves where we feel like we're in places of wandering. We hear the Lord's voice, we hear what he's saying through his word, what he's going to do, but as we hear that, we begin to question, we become uncertain, our belief begins to waver. And I think that's a common struggle that many of us go through. So again, this workshop, it's focused on strengthening our belief and teaching us to exercise our belief with confidence. You can sign up for that on my website, which is kingdomlivingwithjessie.com. You'll see it there, and registration and the price for all of that is on there. So I encourage you guys to check that out.
Thank you, Jessie. You haven't prayed, have you?
What was that?
Did you pray? You didn't pray
I did
yet.
not. Let me pray.
Heavenly
Father, again, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the knowledge, the wisdom, the understanding you give. Father, we know that your desire is that none should perish. And Lord, part of the problem is that we have people that choose to engage in evil and wickedness, and they choose to engage in that evil and wickedness against children. Father, we ask that they may come to a knowledge of truth, that they may come to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, Lord, that they may be delivered out of the system with a mighty hand. And Lord, in that you would also deliver all the children, that there would be no more people to harm children or commit acts against them. Lord, we ask for the children that you would deliver them out with a mighty hand. We ask for your protection, and we ask that we may see the children come out of the darkness, just as your word says, with songs of joy. Lord, only you can work such a great miracle that they would not come out being bound by their trauma, being bound by the horrific things that they have seen and had to participate in. We ask for your healing for those children, for the healing of their bodies, the healing of their minds, the healing of their spirits. We ask that you would deliver them quickly and with such a great deliverance that they may proclaim that you have done it. They may proclaim your glory, your honor, and your praise, and your great redemption. We ask this for every child. In your name we pray, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jessie.